Hello and welcome to MySecurity TV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with MySecurity Media, and this is a special Tuesday evening session here in Sydney for our normal episode, and we're going to be crossing over to Sweden and the UK for my afternoon and for their morning. We're going to be having Leo Levit, who is the Chairman with ONVIF, first up, and we're going to be looking at the new ONVIF profiles M and D. These are dealing with dynamic video analytics and also access control peripherals. And then we're going to move from sort of IoT video standards and then move into the UK space industry. And we're going to be joined by Paul Williams, who's the founder and director with Black Arrow Space Technologies. I love that name. Now, this is also going to be covering off on just a general overview of the UK space industry, as well as what Black Arrow is up to, but also some of the global investments. And just today, Australia and the UK have formalised a UK space bridge framework as well. So we'll cover off a little bit of that. We cover off on aerospace and space, defence and national security, cybersecurity and critical technology, and cities and infrastructure. We should be streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn and Facebook. Our main Facebook page is the Asia Pacific Security Magazine. Otherwise, you can hashtag MySecurityTV. And very much welcome to say g'day wherever you happen to be listening from, particularly if you're in the Europe or UK area, and let us know where you're listening from as well. We'll go for a good 45 to 50 minutes today, and you're also welcome to put any comments or questions in to our particular speakers as well. Just a quick catch up on what we did on Friday. We had Greg O'Lone, the Regional VP of ANZ with Epicor, looking at cloud-based solutions and their enterprise resource planning SaaS model, and particularly used in manufacturing. So thank you to Greg, and also to Kashira Sagar, who is the Chief Data Officer with Latitude Financial Services, looking at data science and what the role of a CDO actually is, and a very good interview that was with Kashira as well. Also, we did a special episode last week with Elmo, looking at the Employee Sentiment Index and the Elmo findings that employees, are open to employers mandating COVID-19 vaccinations as well. So again, another good session. Just to highlight to our upcoming webinar we have on August 10 with ForcePoint. We've got Nick Savides there, Senior Director of Strategic Business. And also we've got the Head of Security, or their Chief Information Security Officer, Alex Lezo, who is with Flybys. And we're going to be looking at the data protection considerations during a security transformation project. Otherwise, you can check our episodes out on the Cybersecurity Weekly podcast. There's a couple there, both from MySecTV and also our Singapore correspondent. And then also you can catch up with the Cyber Risk Leaders magazine also. Just one second, just lost the screen. And that's pretty much it from us. Maybe thank you for the sponsors. We've got IT Glue on how to master IT documentation, and their on-demand webinar series is available on the MySecurity Marketplace, and also RSA, their Secure ID, which is an RSA business, is also available. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, welcome to head to mysectv.shop and check out our merchandise and our Cyber War series. And that's it from me and the Marketplace. And without further ado, I'll bring on the Chairman of ONVIF, Leo Levit, there in Sweden. Leo, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Good on you, and thank you very much. Well done, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Leo, we had a very good sort of pre-interview discussion, and it's really a hard one where we're going to start with, but ONVIF have just released Profile M and Profile D. Maybe we'll start with introduce ONVIF and sort of what they're up to, and then we'll move into profiles, and then we'll kind of move into more broader industry discussion. So a little bit more about ONVIF and what your key sort of role is as a global organisation.
So, as you might know, the mission of ONVIF is to provide and promote open interfaces for the security industry to enable effective interoperability. So, ONVIF is a global organization, and it's really a member-driven organization. We're counting 500 plus members across the globe at the moment, and those are device manufacturer, system integrator, and so on and so on. We also have a number of companies that are working with the clients that receiving information from the security devices, such as VMS manufacturers. So our role is very simple. Basically, it's to define the network interfaces connecting security devices, standardize them, provide profiles that really can make it easier for the users to identify products that are conformant with the profiles that include specifications.
Well, you've got about 8 key profiles. You've been around since 2008. It's amazing how fast time flies. And again, I can't remember how many members you would have had, but it's great to see about 500 sort of a member base there as well. And you're with Access, so that's a member base. Maybe how does the committee get structured and the member base? How does that happen?
So ONVIF have a number of committees, and committees are built up by the members. The committee members are elected by the voting of the of the members of ONVIF.
So you nominate, members nominate them. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, members can be nominated to the committee, and then there is a voting process to fulfill that.
Now, you've been in the role as the chair, so you're sort of almost like the CEO role. Is that how I said it? You've been in the role since early this year.
It's not a commercial enterprise, really.
No, but just to get a sense.
So my role is to lead a steering committee, which is a committee responsible for the organization as a whole. So we're not setting the technical specification. We have a technical committee who really work with the specifications. We have technical services committee that works with test tool and profiles and process for the conformance. For the conformance products. And we also have a communication committee, which is very important for us because we're also communicating and marketing what we do. So communication committees have a very important role to play in order to really communicate and promote ONVIF.
Well, look, it's one of those things. It's it's not a small task to bring out a new profile. It's a major influence in the industry on how the industry gets to function, particularly around video surveillance and IoT devices. Let's start with sort of Profile M came out first, which instigated this interview. And then while we're in that process, Profile D popped out as well. So maybe talk us, and there's about 8 profiles all up. I've definitely been applying Profile S and T, but we won't go through them all. That's a whole series there. But maybe introduce us to Profile M, and then we'll have a chat about Profile D.
Absolutely. So before we jump into that, so I think it's very, I think at least I'm very proud of this milestone that we just passed some months ago, that we have now over 20,000 conformant products on the market. Nice. So ONVIF holds the database of all the products that are conformant to one or several profiles, and we are counting over 20,000 of those, which is a massive achievement, really.
And just to clarify, Leo, they're products, or they're the end products, right? Are they the cameras and the devices and the switches through that, or is it also the VMS profiles as well that they have to integrate?
So let's say it like that. In order to pass the information from one node to another, both of them need to understand this language, right? So, of course, when the camera sends something to VMS need to understand what it is. So profiles are implemented on both sides.
Got it. And so that's 2 products out of that 20,000?
So it's 20,000 of individual products, both VMSs and or clients and devices, as we call them, that are conformant to one or several profiles. Nice.
Well, look, just a bit of feedback from you. I'm sure you do get it from your Australian partners anyway, but the ONVIF profiles are within our own specifications here for most projects, regardless, and obviously within the Australian standards. I think there's a slight variation between the Australian standards, ISO standards, and ONVIF. You can go either way, I think. Might be something we might need to check. If anyone's listening, let us know. But I'm pretty sure if you're not compliant with a certain standard, you can go the ONVIF profiles and you can still kind of meet those specs. So, yeah, no, keep up the good work. We cover it on our CCTV buyer's guide. So we cover anything with ONVIF gets put onto that particular channel. But yeah, maybe we were moving into sort of machine learning and AI, and maybe even touching on things like facial recognition and biometrics. And this is where Profile M sort of comes into play, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we talked about that just before we went live, right? And we see certain trends on the market, and AI and machine learning, deep learning as a subset of those is really a trend that's emerging, and it's triggered by several things that are going on. So first of all, there is a technology as such that becoming mature. There is capabilities in the devices that are now able to really accelerate artificial intelligence on the edge. So it doesn't need to be a massive service. The device is becoming more and more capable, but also the use case is becoming more and more mature. So it's kind of maturity with an AI that goes all the way from the physical capabilities of the devices to the capabilities of the people who are working with those solutions. And those applications generate a massive amount of data. And data as such is, of course, of a value, but it's much more important to understand what's in this data and how it can be used. So there is a great demand on standardizing the way the data from the analytics application in the devices transferred to other devices to build a complete analytics system. So different type of metadata can be transferred and used by the clients from the devices. And Profile M is a profile that standardized how the metadata is transferred and some events.
So in other words, how it's structured, the sort of the data set that it creates, right? And then how you can then read that.
Yeah, so the metadata could be, well, within Profile M, we have specified a number of specific classes like geolocation, vehicle, license plate, human face, human body. And there is also a generic object class that can be used for the broader use. And those classes could be used for several purposes. For instance, you could identify a number plate and transfer the data of this number plate to open a gate when the vehicle approaching a gate, and it's utilized as a credential for and to enter the premises. So I think it's very important profile for us on the way to enable utilization of AI as a technology that generates a massive amount of data and could be used by receiving systems to build a sustainable and working system that really helps communities.
Where does the drive come from for, say, a profile like this? Because most of the devices now are creating that metadata. And is it the member base of ONVIF goes, hey, we're all doing this and we're finding that some systems aren't integrating right, and, you know, we're all sort of collecting the same data, but now we need to standardize it because, you know, it's obviously not a new thing. Does it get to a point where, okay, everyone's doing it, now we're getting some integration issues and we need to have a new profile so everyone's doing it in the same way, and it sort of takes the competition out of the market, does it not?
Actually, it's not. It's triggered the usability of those devices, because I think we need to get back to the whole topic of interoperability, why it's good.
Yeah.
There are very few companies, if any, that are totally end-to-end, that is not dependent on any other components to build up an entire system. So for a lot of device manufacturers, for instance, it's extremely important to reach other systems as well, so system integrators can easily and safely take the components from device manufacturers and know that other system will receive the data in the correct way. So actually, interoperability does not remove the competitiveness, but it's really trigger the possibilities and evolves the market. It's really stimulates the market to utilize the technology in a better way.
And where this is all for new products coming through, do you think it's more of is this potentially a firmware upgrade, or is it for new products coming out that they would want to conform with Profile M?
It's a very good question. It's actually both. So when you test your products for conformance, conformance is valid for a specific firmware version. So if your product have received a new firmware upgrade that is enables Profile M, that product becomes conformant. So we will see both new products that implements Profile M, but we also will see products that already have the capabilities for metadata, but they will probably
it's all good.
probably get new functionalities by implementing firmware upgrades.
Yeah, and maybe we were touching on sort of facial recognition just briefly. There's been a bit of pushback on facial recognition in some parts, even in the US, potentially here discussions in Australia about moratoriums on use of facial recognition. A profile like this, would that potentially provide some level of comfort to know that there's a bit of insight and measurement there and recognition that facial recognition is a part of the metadata and it is standardized? Do you think that will help these kind of discussions?
I think it's important to see the different roles of different players in the industry. So ONVIF's role is to create interfaces and specify interfaces and profiles that makes interoperability easier and create possibilities for the systems to be built up and fulfill use cases. But at the same time, there is a great need to operate and build those systems in accordance to ethical norms and legal requirements. So facial recognition is a great technology, and as any technology, it can be used for the greater good, but it can also be used to harm. And I think it's a great discussion to have whether facial recognition is technology of the future or it should be just killed. But I think from ONVIF side, we want to create an interface that can be used, and we will want to work with those who develop the systems and see how the system should work in accordance to the ethical norms. So the great technology as facial recognition can be used for the greater good and not the way around.
Well, everyone's using facial recognition anyway. Every time they pick up the device, it's using their face. So it's just a matter of the application. One thing that just came to me then is people's gait, the way they walk, included in this?
How could you explain?
So everyone, their walking signature, their gait, the way that they walk is also an individual signature for people. Is that something under sort of, you mentioned object counting, license plate recognition, facial recognition. Is there other biometrics that we might not be fully utilizing covered in this potentially, or is it quite
not
specific?
not as a part of Profile M, but of course it can be if you can obviously define a human body and track it with the help of this profile, and body will move in a certain way, and you can see the path of moving, right? So, but it's up to receiving system to really analyze this path and see how it can be triggered certain actions.
Very good. Okay, and then this also covers, I mean, this is all ONVIF it's covering now. I noticed this is all also including sort of drones. So whether it's an IP camera or a video-based drone, this ONVIF applies to that. Do you find ONVIF being more and more applied to drones? Basically, it's any camera and video surveillance. Is that where ONVIF has moved to? Are your members growing in that area?
I don't have the data about a particular industry where ONVIF is growing at the moment, but obviously as we develop those specifications to cover all security devices, so I don't see why drones or any other device cannot be used that if they want to build or be a part of the system that integrates easily.
Great. Well, maybe let's touch on Profile D as well. And we do have Paul Williams in the background. So we'll be moving on to Paul very shortly. But we'll just finish off with Profile D, Leo. And this is for access control peripherals. So obviously the integration with access control systems and security management platforms.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important because over time, at least during my work within Access Communications, we've seen ONVIF as something that really specifies communication between camera and VMS. But actually, if you see that the market access control and devices connected to access control system are very important, and that's very much reflected in the ONVIF portfolio of profiles. So Profile D is not the first profile in access control domain for ONVIF, but it adds some new use cases. So the initial or the most important parts there is that Profile D transferred the input credentials, identifiers, and requests for access from, for instance, card reader, pads, any other type of devices that sits at the gate or at the door and want to transfer the credential to the system, who will decide whether to open the door or gate or not. And also what's included in this profile now is the actions such as locking or unlocking.
All right.
So
and
that's
it aligns to that Profile A and Profile C, because it has been some standard comms around electronic access control systems previously.
Right.
Yeah, and as you just mentioned, this comes into the biometric readers, the cameras for iris, facial, and license plate recognition again. So it's kind of going down to that maybe next level of the way that the access control is moving. Door status is there, temperature, motion, and some output devices. So these are quite good. Any others in the pipeline? These two came out kind of back to back. What's obviously everyone locking lockdown, they've had more time to do work on these maybe, but yeah, what's in the pipeline with these?
So the process of getting profiles out is pretty long, because it's an industry standard. It needs to be verified. It needs to be agreed between members. So it's really, it takes time, and profiles are built on the interface specifications, which is a result of the work from technical committee that I mentioned before as a part of ONVIF. So there is a constant discussions and work within those committees on different specifications, and specifications are being updated regularly. So, but it not necessarily mean that all of them will end up in the profile. So there is a huge amount of work done on the specifications as such. And sometimes we group them together when we see that they fulfill a very specific use case, like in case of Profile D for the access control peripherals, and then we release it as a profile. So one important thing that you all can follow now is that actually the specification work is within ONVIF is done as open source, so it's on GitHub. And people can see the specifications and participate and kind of give the comments to the development. And that also triggers a massive possibility for companies who are not members to give input. So because from time to time we get the question, yeah, but 500 members, that's great. How you get input from the market? And I think GitHub, it's a fantastic platform, but it's also a way for us to get the input from people outside ONVIF.
So
I think the work is continuous.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a question. Are there devices in the process of qualification for these profiles already? How long does it take, I suppose, before devices start to take on these profiles? What's the sort of the life cycle?
So, first of all, in order for profile to be released, there are a number of criteria that need to be fulfilled. So that have to be devices and clients who verify that the profile works. So even before it's released, there are devices from the members who work with these profiles that hold the conformant. Now, if we see a profile M, at least, I haven't checked profile D, but for profile M, I'm pretty sure there are quite a number of devices that are already state conformants in the database. And you can always see the conformance devices or conformance product database on onvif.org. So it's open information, and that's probably the only valid source to see whether product is really conformant product or not.
Actually, that's onviv.org, and it's quite a resource-rich website as well. There's a lot of content in here as well, so it's worth having a look. And I'm just cognizant of time here, Leo, but one area that did spark my interest in being here in the Asia Pacific, it certainly has our interest, is the tech divide that we're seeing in the world. Do you think ONVIF has growing importance when we have sort of trade conflict emerging and in technology? How do you read this in terms of ONVIF's role between the differentiation? We're obviously talking about sort of US-China technology, but there's always that divide, and how ONVIF plays an important role there.
Yeah. So again, the mission of ONVIF is to act as a global standardization organization for the network interfaces for the security devices, and we have a number of members from China, and those companies been really important for us and had a lot of participation in different committees and help us to develop. Unfortunately, some of those companies ended up in variety of lists from US Chamber of Commerce, for instance, that limits their possibility to access a certain information from ONVIF. We as an organization are always following the laws and regulations applicable. So we follow these restrictions that US put on those companies. But the dream scenario is that we can act for one global standard that could unite technologies rather than splitting them.
Yeah, as you say, I think that's it's a dream. It's a dream. I don't know whether it's going to happen or not, but I think, again, we need the likes of ONVIF there, I believe. I know it's definitely helped me a couple of times when we're trying to spec cameras and the like. You just go to those ONVIF profiles and you kind of that's your base, and you go from there. So it's always good to see. And as Hannah pointed out, it's a bit of a game changer. D is a good one, but obviously M is also another one, and flows on from what we talked about last week with our data scientist as well. Now, we haven't covered off on COVID and the situation with that, but maybe some closing comments on COVID, Leo, in terms of the market, the video surveillance market. CCTV has been quite prominent. It's had to adapt for people counting. You know, that video analytics has played a more important and sort of more high-profile role. Is this something you've observed globally, or all of your members have been observing as well? And yeah, just any particular comments or observations you've had in that domain?
First of all, the pandemic is a tragic event in human history, no doubt there. But I think it had its positive effects on the technological development, and we have seen a number of use cases being on the market for a very long time, like crowd management, people counting, different types of detections from analytics. But now there is a real demand and real willingness on the market to implement those, like mask detection and crowd management. So the industry adapt very, very quickly, and it's a big number of players on the market now that really implement analytical capabilities in the devices that can provide this information to other systems for secure health and safety of the people. So I think it's very prominent that we see development of analytical capabilities triggered by COVID situation. As an industry, we also adapted very quickly to online events. Instead of trade shows, we have multiple events going on online. Education been very, very important for us, because majority of our members work with channel, with distribution, with resellers, and education towards those guys been extremely important all the time. So now it's more online, in opposite to physical face-to-face meeting. Even with an ONVIF, we used to meet on regular basis. Now it's haven't been possible, but I think we're all human beings and we're very dependent on face-to-face human interaction. So I think I really look forward to the next events where we can meet again and start discussing, because as people, we really need this personal interaction to trigger discussions, to trigger innovation. And I think industry in the whole will benefit from that in the future.
Very good. And it's very consistent. I did a webinar last night with members across the world, very similar views in terms of the importance of human interaction. But it's definitely been something we've monitored with the role of video analytics, as you say, and you pointed out. So it has been quite an interesting ride from the technology side. But Leo Levit, the ONVIF Steering Committee Chair there in Sweden, thank you so much for your time. And sorry we didn't have more. We'll have to have you on again as these profiles roll out and you settle into your chair there. This is your first year as the ONVIF Chair, so enjoy the role.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'll let you go and I'll put you backstage. Thank you, Leo. Okay, very good. Let me just sort out my profiles here. And without further ado, he's been waiting patiently in the background. Thanks for coming in nice and early. Mr. Paul Williams, founder and director of Black Arrow Space. Paul, thanks for joining us. We don't have audio. You might be on mute.
Every time.
Oh,
every
beautiful.
time. We were talking about this prevalence of online platforms, and the mute button gets me every single time.
What a shame. But anyway, it was a perfect introduction on my side. Paul, thanks so much for joining us. And from video standards and video surveillance into the space domain, really appreciate your time. It's your morning there, so it's not too bad in terms of the crossover. Maybe introduce us to Black Arrow. I think it's the best space name I've seen so far. We've got a few good ones here, like Southern Launch here in Australia, and a few others. Gilmore Space are not bad, but Black Arrow Space Technologies. Maybe introduce us to how you came up with Black Arrow.
So, good morning from the UK. It's beautifully sunny here. It's Australian weather, I would say. 28 degrees already, and it's nice. I'm sweating buckets. And good evening to you and to all of your listeners. It's really exciting to be on an Australian platform, and the opportunity to outreach to people that we wouldn't normally get to is very exciting. And thanks for the opportunity.
Well, look, this was news that came out today from our SmartSat CRC in Adelaide. And the Satellite Applications Catapult launch funding for bilateral research projects. This is the first collaborative activity within the UK and Australia Space Bridge framework. Is being launched today by SmartSat CRC, UK Science and Innovation Network, and the Satellite Applications Catapult with the support of Austrade and the Australian Space Agency. So this is, and thank you to Dr. Chris Flaherty here in Australia, who suggested we reach out to you. And it is part of this UK-Australia Space Bridge framework that we have reached out. So, that's this is only a small indication that there is collaboration and interest between the UK and Australia. Apart from, we keep hearing about UK standards for COVID and comparisons to Australia, but it's better to be talking about space on that context.
There's a standard?
No. What the UK, we're just very interested apparently on what the UK is doing, and you're dead right. We are asking is why are we comparing ourselves to what they're doing, but that's the way it is.
That's another discussion we can have at some other time.
Yeah. Look, introduce
the space bridge. Let me just say a word on the space bridge. It's a great opportunity for both ends, but it has to be grasped and managed correctly and maximized. This shouldn't be just another talking shop about how great one end is over the other. This is an opportunity that ties in with the UK government's outreach towards the Trans-Pacific Partnership, to that area, to India, to the Pacific, whatever you call it, rim areas. Yeah. And I think it's a really important key stone of that outreach. And Australia has always been a very close partner and colleague of the UK. We're tied together within Five Eyes, of course, but also in cricket and in other areas. We have a lot of shared values.
Have you seen it already, Paul? Do you see? Are you hearing the Australian Space Agency and Australia mentioned in your space industry there yet?
I think it's a bit too early. I know, as in Australia, there is in the UK regional introductions to the space bridge and how various companies and agencies get involved and will be explaining the advantages of the space bridge as we go along. Remember, this was only signed in February, so 4 months, and then there's the pandemic to take into account. It's a bit difficult to get messaging out in this particular environment, but moves are afoot, and I'd like to just fly a flag for private industry. Space has been dominated by billionaires, of course, and by institutionalized entities for as long as I can remember. It's always been the big guys or the rich guys who have done stuff. There's now becoming more of a realization that you don't need to be big or rich to do this. You just need a passion, a vision, and a determination to succeed. And that you don't need to be rich or big to do that.
You've had some 30 odd years in aerospace. You created Black Arrow in 2017, so you're definitely in the startup realm. And you're looking at both a launch platform, a maritime launch platform, and you've got the rocket as well, right? The vehicle to take payloads up.
Yeah.
Where are you at? Are you still at a design stage, or are you firing off rockets as well?
No. We're still in the early design stage. Okay. We still have a lot of teaming to do. We have investment rounds to pull. And if anybody's of your listenership is interested to get in on that, then please contact me. Let me.
Well, it's blackarrow-space.uk. I'll put it up in the show notes anyway, Paul.
Yeah, .uk, not .co.uk. There is some confusion there, as you can imagine. So let me tell you about Black Arrow. Black Arrow writes its own story. You know, going back to the late 60s, early 70s, Black Arrow was the original UK-Australia space bridge. You know, we built these rockets in the UK. They were tested here, and then they were shipped to Australia for launch out of Woomera. And that was the Blue Streak first stage. It was the Black Arrow satellite launcher, and that went on to, after an untimely cancellation, that went on to the Europa class, which indirectly led to the Ariane group of the Ariane family of launchers in the late 60s, early 70s. So there is heritage there, and Black Arrow is a name that conjures up all kinds of mystery, pride, uncertainty, all of these emotions within the UK space-leaning public, and probably Australia as well, because there is a history there. So Black Arrow was the obvious name for me. You know, Black Arrow Space Technologies, the current company, came from a failed entity that was going around for 4 or 5 years, based out of Florida, that never really got anywhere because of lack of investment, because lack of personal investment from the founder. So I took it over actually in 2017, and then rebranded it as Black Arrow Space Technologies, which incidentally shortens down, if you think about it, to BLAST, BLAST, which is a fantastic little moniker, you know.
Although I still like Black Arrow Space.
Yeah, of course you do.
Very cool name, yeah.
Of course you do. But when you're talking to people, when you're writing to people, especially, you don't want to go with the whole name all the time. So we shorten it to BLAST, which gets a few people hot and wet. So nice. So Black Arrow is, as you said, it's an end-to-end space ecosystem. You know, we'll be researching materials, we'll be building components, mostly structural components, and that will go to formulate the rocket, the flight bodies. Now we're very lucky in having an engine partner in Germany who are developing a really kick-ass engine technology that fits in with our approach to reusability, to composites, lack of or low emission, all of these good words, and they are absolutely modern and largely non-metallic, which is something completely new in the space game. You'd only need to talk to Gilmore to find out that probably the longest lead item on any rocket or space flight development is the engine, and we're really lucky that these guys in Germany have been at it for about 8 years now. Right. So they are doing the development of the engine in parallel. All we have to do is to design and build a rocket body around the engine, more or less, and figure out how to operate it.
Well, I know that we did another interview down here. There's another German company helping a couple of Australian researchers in this space. So I'll try to find it, and if it's anything related, we'll put it in. But it does become this collaboration, isn't it? The borders go down, and you start to seek out the specialists in this field. Is that how you find it too? That
absolutely,
you've got the vision and you build it and collaborate.
So I spoke about big and rich. The only way those who aren't big or rich are going to succeed is by collaboration. Yep. And we have partners interested from Canada, We have partners interested in India who have also done this kind of work outside of the standardized regulations. You know, they developed their 2 launch vehicles completely autonomously. So that's really exciting, because they have an industry there who are knowledgeable and experienced, and we can draw on them through another free trade deal that we've got with the Indians going through. So that really plays into our hands. But coming to the space bridge, I see Black Arrow as more or less the physical manifestation of the space bridge. It's not just air, it's not just words. We will be developing or building rocket bodies. We'll be bringing our seaborne spaceport to Australia if all goes well, and there will be an opportunity there for rockets or for systems to be built in Australia, for the operations to be based out of Australia, probably Perth, but there's no reason for that. It just keeps it away from your cousins and neighbors who are doing this thing separately, you know.
Well, I take it with your maritime launch, you can then move that around the world to wherever you need it to get the orbits you require. Is that the idea?
Yes, that's largely it. But of course, there's what we want to try and do is to reduce the lead time from dock to launch as much as possible. There's no point building the rocket and sending it out from South Wales for an Australian launch. It just makes no sense to sail for 6 weeks or whatever it takes to get to the launch location. So what we'd be doing is looking for collaborative strategic partners excuse me, within the areas that we want to operate, so that the payloads, wherever they come from, and they can come from anywhere around the world, of course, the payloads can fly into an airport. We can pick them up with our franchise partner, do all the preparation, even do the final integration of the rockets and the engines and the avionics and everything else on the dockside complex, stick it on the ship, and away we go to around about 100 miles offshore. And this is where Perth becomes more attractive, because there's a huge expanse of ocean out there that we can fire off into any trajectory and orbit that we want. And that's one really exciting aspect of this. One of our potential operational maps has all of the British overseas territories that you might be familiar with. They're generally small islands in the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, that have very limited economies, and they would welcome some kind of economic support coming in through this operation. And we can support them either by having supply bases there, or tracking stations there, or just being an economical support vehicle. There's there's a number of Caribbean nations that we can use. But getting out to those, and also getting out to the Commonwealth, and on that point, we want to be flying a Commonwealth flag, which means that we incorporate the entire Commonwealth family into all this. And we're all about inclusion. We're all about innovation, and we want space to truly be an all-encompassing sector that everybody can get involved with and everybody can benefit from.
Well, there's 2 parts. One is you've got a video of what the platform should look like. There is one on your website too, but it'd be good to have a look at it now. And I suppose the other thought I had is, what is your timeline for this? Because and then thinking about timelines, you then have your hurdles that you're going to have to jump through this. Again, our government systems, even though we might have free trade agreements, can often be a barrier or slow you down and slow that innovation down. Do you want to show your video first, and then we get a sense of what we're talking about?
Yeah, my only concerns here are sharing my screen.
Yeah, in the bottom, you've got a share screen option next to your video.
I don't actually.
You've got some little.
I've got mute. I've got disable camera, and I've got settings.
Okay, then we won't be able to show the video unless I can potentially show mine here. But otherwise,
if you can take it off the website, that'd be cool.
I could at least.
But the soundtrack needs to be played with it.
Otherwise, it's not as exciting. Is this what you can tell me?
Yeah, it's the soundtrack. That's right, and then turn it up.
Okay, let me see.
In fact, after the show, Chris, I'll send you a WeTransfer link, and you can show it after the event.
Yeah, look, I'll quickly put it into the show notes there. Hang on a second. I'll put it out to the Asia Pacific Security Magazine on the Facebook channel, and I'll put it on YouTube as well, so they can at least go to the website. And let me just try sharing this. I think I'm going to stop sharing and start again. 1 second. Let's see if this works. Let's just get you ready to caption. And maybe talk us through, if we don't get the music, you might be able to talk us through it, Paul.
Oh, that's a pity.
What a shame.
Anyway, so the whole essence of Black Arrow, as we said, is to draw in all of the critical systems in from various areas. This just shows the UK, but of course, as I've said, there's partners in Germany and Canada, India, and hopefully Australia. You know, who's to say what can happen in the future? And all these will come together. They'll be integrated on dockside down in South Wales, and then put onto a ship and sailed out, in this case, to Southwest Island, but the launch location is immaterial at this stage. The stability of the vessel is of concern to us, and we do have some great naval architects alongside us to advise us and to implement stability systems. We've also got launch table partners from the US who are going to help with that. So the integration of the final integration and preparation of the payloads and of the rocket, all of the fueling and pressurization will happen on board. As you can see, the table is as far away from the infrastructure as possible, and then with all the crew away on the control vessel, we'll be ready for launch. That will then happen autonomously, and an automatic launch sequence will be in place. And then as soon as the launcher is clear of the site, as it were, then the crews will be allowed back. So the launch vehicle, the launch vessel will be clear, and the personnel will be protected during that time. So then we have what is a standard launch scenario, with the first stage peeling away, the second stage heading off into the bright blue yonder, and the satellite or payload being deployed into its intended orbit.
Well done.
So all of that is fairly standard fare, I would say, with anyone who's familiar with this kind of operation. There are nuances and limitations and restrictions around seaborne launch, but they are by no stretch of the imagination anywhere close to those around land-based launch sites. And we think that one of the, there's a number of benefits of seaborne launch. One, of course, which will play into your own interests, is the inherent security of a seaborne site. You have very finite boundaries. Everything is managed and maintained within those boundaries, and anybody coming into a very small range can be challenged at any time, either using drone boats or by our safety personnel, which will be only a mile away. I hope we don't have to resort to having Marines on board, but
well, I suppose now that we've seen it, and what I can do is I can overlay that, Paul. So even in the edited version, this is obviously the live version, but we release an edited version of this particular interview, and I'll overlay that video to this, even though your talk through was quite well done too during that. So I'll include that in. But it raises a lot of questions. I've got about 1 million questions that I'm sure your investors and anyone who's looking at this would have. The launch and the launch vehicle aside, because potentially you could always outsource that. And again, I like the way that the ship is designed. Are you looking at just a basic sort of repurposing a sort of an oil tanker related I like the way the hull's been redesigned to allow the ejection to go out. Is that where this design's come from? Is this where you're thinking?
So you're probably familiar with Sea Launch, right? The original, let's say, Sea Launch proposition that was put out, that was operated successfully from the west coast of the States from 94 to 2014. This was really the proof of concept that we're based on. You know, it's clear that as long as you address the questions, the obvious questions of stability, not only of the vessels but between the vessels, if there's any exchange between the vessels, they have to be mitigated so that nobody is put under any danger, and certainly no hardware is put under any danger. Sea Launch operated for, as I say, 10 years, but the Sea Launch vessels were hugely expensive. They were the semi-submersible oil rig was purposed specifically for space launch, and the command vessel was built specifically for that purpose. What we've done is we've taken all the functions of the two Sea Launch vessels and shuffled them around a bit. The pad isn't only the pad as it was on Sea Launch. The pad is the integration vessel. It's the propellant storage. It's everything you need to get there. The command vessel is the refuge, let's say, of the teams coming off the vessel, so that we can monitor all of the automated sequences, hazardous sequences that nobody wants to get involved with, and the command center, the big screens, and the teams working the rocket and watching the payloads and all the systems and such. They will all be on the command vessel, and the safety crews, as I've said, will move back as soon as the site is clear to avoid poaching or damp down any effects of the launch. So we've not got a separate pad and command vessel. We've got a fully functional launch site on one vessel. Now, that video that you've just shown assumes the 500 kilo lift. This is the basic lift. This is our qualification vehicle. So we'll learn everything we need to learn on that vehicle and in that launch scenario. What I should say is that we will then follow the same path as Rocket Lab has done. So they started with a smaller lift, 350 kilos or something, and that now they're going up to 8 tons, I believe, which gives them a whole new playground to play in. They can go to geo, they're talking about interplanetary, they're talking about all this other stuff, but they can do that, and it brings in a whole different paradigm of revenue from that, and they can start challenging the big boys then. So we're following the same path. It's not that we're deliberately following Rocket Lab. It makes sense to get bigger. At the 500 kilo level, you can't really make money. You know, it costs too much to put the rocket up for a small payload. Yeah. In order to make any money, you have to go to 5 tons to LEO, and that's where kind of ballpark where we're looking at once we're mature enough to move on to that stage. And we'll be using all of the technologies and the engine technologies and everything that we put into the 500 kilo. There's nothing reinvented to go to the 5 ton, except of course the scaled up
the scalability.
Spaceport. The spaceport will need to be bigger. So just a word on that. For the smaller vehicle, we're looking at a Handymax size dry bulk carrier, which is converted. It has the 5 holds inside, which are enormous. Unless you stand in one of those holds, you don't realize how enormous these things are. But there's 5 holds that can be cut into workshops. They can be split vertically, horizontally, whatever we see fit, and also bolstered. You know, around the launch table, we're going to need heat barriers. We're going to need protective systems for the propellants, which will all be at the front of the ship. And you know, safety is paramount. We're not going to go out to sea and try and blow the bejesus out the front of the ship. That's not the intention at all. And of course, safety of the payloads, the customers ultimately,
of course,
and the crews are absolutely paramount, and we'll be doing everything in our power to do that. And I would just say that the naval architects who were working on sea launch in the Govan shipyard are now in our naval architects team, so they know what they're doing, and they know the international maritime regulations that they have to meet, along with all of the other nuances around conversion of those types of vessels.
Where are you in the business process, Paul? What's your timeline? You've obviously got investors, but you've been a sort of an ongoing series raise, I take it. What's your timeline? And one other question is, are you signing up customers already for those early payloads, or a bit too early yet?
It's too early for signing them up. They are aware of what we're doing through shows just such as yours. You know, we've had podcasts, and we've reached out in exhibitions and conferences to potential customers. A lot of them know who we are, and they're waiting, I think, and so are we, waiting until we get to a comfortable position that we can go out and show them what we mean by seaborne launch, show them the performance of the vehicle, show them a confident user manual. This is how we do stuff. This is why it's going to be safe. This is why we're ultimately going to be cheaper than anybody else. And that, I think we have to answer those questions before we go out and start pressing flesh and talking directly to customers. But the customer base is growing almost on a daily basis. You know,
well, I was going to say, how do you, because I imagine that, and this is something we've been talking about with the space industry, how it seems to be, you know, getting highly competitive, it's growing, but that also forces the prices down. So unless you're quick to market or you have a set goal to market, that by the time you get there, if you take too long, the market and the prices may have changed as well. How are you managing that? Because you've got a lot to manage here from both the platform and the launch vessels as well.
There is a lot to manage, and I'm under no illusions that this is an ambitious project. We've thought long and hard about that strategy, and the key messages on that strategy is you have to do things at least as well as your competitors for the same price. Okay,
and it's safe as well.
Well, safety, I would hope, and I can only talk for Black Arrow, but I would hope that all of our challengers take safety as the number one concern. Yeah. I'm sadly aware that few of them do, but it has to be a target rather than a bottom starting point. You know.
Yeah.
Safety is really paramount, and customers won't come back to you if you blow the top off the payload or drop it in the sea or something at every attempt.
Yeah.
So maturity and reliability is absolutely key, but you also have to bring something different to the market, and we're bringing the ultimate in mobile launch operations. Now, many analysts have said the only way the UK is going to, and this is specifically around the UK market, or the market that's open to UK operation. Analysts have said that the only way the UK is going to be able to reliably have a launch operation is through mobile. And Virgin Orbit have shown that with their air-launched systems, which are finite at the lower end. You know, you can't put 5 tons on an airborne platform unless you're flying Strato, whatever it is, Strato,
right?
Whatever. So Virgin and ourselves are very similar in that mobile aspect. If you have a land-based operation, you have to be absolutely certain of the costs around that land-based option. And the UK is not the most conducive place. We don't have a lot of flat areas. Yeah. We don't have a lot of unprotected coastline. We don't have a lot of, you know, in the States and Australia, you could probably put a spaceport anywhere. You could probably position it so you don't fly over anyone or make any threat to any wildlife or any protected coastline. You could probably do that. In the UK, it's largely impossible, and Europe is a very complex region for these kind of activities. This is why ESA went out. Sorry, this is why ESA went out to South America. You know, because there's nothing in Europe that really offers everything.
Well, we did notice Chris Flaherty gave a profile. He does a quarterly profile for us on the space sector, and the UK, Wales, and Northern Scotland, you know, up to Scotland, does have a lot of sort of projects and potential launch locations as well. And this goes back to sort of World War II stage as well. Also, so there's a lot of pedigree there in the UK in the space industry, but there's only like 3 locations nominated here in Australia as well. So as long as they go out to sea, or as you say, over land, it's not too bad. But you know, when I did notice with the Black Arrow and your maritime launch, it opens up those possibilities that you've as you say, that mobile launch for you in terms of what you're doing. I'm just trying to find the last one we did on the rocket launch as well that they've been working on here in Australia, but it's a few months ago. Well, look, I suppose we've got your website up. We'll have that video out on here as well. What would be your sort of final call to action, Paul, on what you'd like the listeners and the viewers to sort of either leave them with or to reach out to you for, and where they might go, and what you need right now? What's a priority for you?
So I will just answer your question about the timeline. You asked about the timeline. So the hope is, and everything is looking good for a substantial investment round to be closed very shortly. Once that happens, then we have 2 years to get into the air with our initial flight systems. That includes the converted ship in its initial stage. So we'll try and get test launches out by mid-23.
Okay, well, that's pretty tight, yeah.
It is tight, but as I said, the lead time is really around the engines, and the engines are largely developed. It is, but it's still tight, you know. But we have a very capable design team coming from Formula One. What they don't know about composites and rapid development strategies isn't worth knowing. So I have full confidence in those guys to be able to come up with a flight system and draw in all of these critical systems from elsewhere to a point that we can launch within 2 years on test flights. We then have 10 test flights slated. The back 5 are probably going to be open for commercial customers at cost. You know, we have to do 10 launches to prove reliability and dependability, but 5 of them may well be customer passengers on board. Once that happens, once the test flights start happening, and once we start getting meaningful results and lessons from those, then we'll look at the scale up. The design team will be pushed off onto the scale up, and then within 2025 we'll be at scale up. So we'll be flying 5 tons to LEO. Yeah. And at that point, or before that point, then we'll start talking to the Australian government, talking to Australian industry about having operations based in and out of Australian docks. I think it's really exciting, actually.
Oh, look, it's, this is why we've covering it. I'm more of a security guy, but you can't help but with the technology. And again, one of as you're talking through that timeline, I'm also thinking of the data sets and the technology, the machine learning, how you bring that technology. You mentioned the F1 and the motorsports; they're doing that already. And you know, my first thought was to UK innovation, the likes of say Rolls-Royce and the like. We've spoken to what they do also in their engine sets as well. So. That's where the real science for me happens in terms of all those data sets that you'll start to be getting in your measurements as well. So there's so many disciplines involved, and it's set for a very exciting decade, is it not for you? At least?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the takeaway really is for the Australian audience. Really is flying a flag to say that, as I said before, we are the physical manifestation of the UK-Australia space bridge. regardless of what anybody else says, we want to be in the Australian industrial landscape, and we want to be bringing in Australian talent, Australian innovation, manufacturing, materials, all of these things, because it's a resource pool that we can't honestly afford to ignore.
Yep.
You know, the UK hasn't flown a rocket since 1971. And
the year I was born, Paul.
Oh, there you go, mate. Same as me.
It's a long time.
I wish. But there is no expertise here. You know, there's a lot of books being written. There's a lot of designs that are still available. But honestly, the experiences are rapidly diminishing. And that's why it's exciting to draw in from India and from Europe and from Canada and from Australia, you know, because those experiences and those expertise areas are there, and we want to draw them in. We want to be inclusive and socially broad, let's say.
Very good. Well, look, we'll make sure that I'll send through to at least to the SmartSat CRC here that we've done this interview, and I've just put the link up to we have a space and defence.io website. That media release went out today, and we put this interview slotted right in the middle of that, so they knew we were speaking to you. So the timing couldn't have been better, but we'll make sure that they get to see that, and this will be also as part of our ongoing space series that we've been doing. So Paul Williams, the founder and director with Black Arrow Space Technologies. I think we'll book you in for an hour next time, mate. We could have kept going for sure. And obviously we've got the same time zone, morning to afternoon, that we can do this again. So we look forward to sort of following your journey, and it does seem to be sort of in that 6 to 12 month increments as you grow. A lot happens very quickly.
Well, I would say keep an eye on the website, keep an eye on the LinkedIn portal, especially, and the Facebook page, because generally, you know, once the investment touches down in the next couple of weeks, I hope, then events will happen rapidly between now and Christmas.
Well, we've got your email. I'll make sure you put us on your media list as
well.
well.
Keep on, mate. Keep on.
Yeah, we will. No pressure. No pressure. But yeah, we always understand, you know, weeks in this space, you know, when you think about it, is nothing. But no, definitely to keep up and keep the audience interested and get your media releases as they come out.
I'll be delighted to come back, Chris, at any point that you see fit.
Good on you, Paul. I'll let you go, mate.
Thanks,
Enjoy
mate.
your day, and thank you very much for your time. Cheers later.
Bye now.
Okay, let me just quickly finish off the report of the day as we do, and thank you to Paul on that one. The report of the day is on women in tech, and this came out today from Talent, their 2021 research report. Women in tech, are we there yet? But I can't answer that question. Some of the key findings on this one, let me just clear that up. 38% cite self-deselecting based on feeling that they don't meet 100% of the criteria as the biggest hurdle they face in the hiring process. 44% feel that they have been overlooked for promotions due to their gender, and 56% don't see a clear path for their career at their current employer. And there was this is a sort of follows on a massive drop from in STEM, from women entering STEM or staying in STEM. So this is something we do cover on our Women in Security series as well. And there's a number of sort of findings on payment here as well, and also belief there that family responsibilities either have a negative or strongly negative impact on women's in careers also. So look, check that report on the MySecurity Marketplace, and also what's coming up. I'm definitely going to be releasing this out in the next couple of days. Our interview with Manoj Kumar, the Identity Transformed, and our interview with Secure ID, and that should be out by the end of this week. And we've also got a couple of other videos coming out from Department of Defence on their Talisman operation as well, 2021 up there in Queensland. So looking forward to getting them out and showing you. So that's our special episode today, slightly over time, but we looked at ONVIF, Profile M and D, and also the UK space industry. So thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening or the day, wherever you're listening from.